and I look like I got out of bed. Probably.
No, that doesn't matter. What you're doing is extremely valuable. You said, I'm paraphrasing, you're addressing what is the core problem? What is it? How did you say it?
I don't remember how I said it. You should record it. I can't, I can't go back in the flow.
Damn, I stopped you in mid-flow. It was beautiful. You're addressing the core problem.
I think that this is the communication, the whole issue of communication is the core problem that's creating all the conflict in the world.
Mm.
And if you could, if we could magically create a situation where people understood each other and what they were saying and what they intended and what they meant, I think the world's problems would pretty much evaporate.
I mean,
is that a good quote?
This is great. But I'll just write down the last bit, because even though it was recorded, which is creating all the conflict in the world. If we could understand what people,
what people are, if we could understand I think we have misunderstandings in the world. I think they're based on communication. Lee,
it's really exciting what you say. Do you want to say more? But I want to respond, because it's really exciting, because I know more and more that people are so different, and I also know how easy it is that we can fall onto something that's really important, and we can very, very, very easily generalize it. And then it can become our own hobby horse that we keep banging on about it. So it's also possible between the two of us that, we're syncing, and I think we are. And then because of who you are, for whatever mysterious reason, because of who I am, mysterious reason, and then we go, yeah, that's it. And so then we're in a collusion together. Yeah. So you can see right now I'm applying the kind of thing that you encourage, that you talk about in the academic world, which is to apply skepticism and apply appropriate doubt.
Critical thinking.
But it's really, really core. I do feel what is conflict? Well, it's somehow related to communication or problems in communication.
That's I think a huge part of it. I think that's the major part of it. There are conflicts in will where people just have opposing viewpoints, but I think a lot of even that is just misunderstanding. Some of it's intentional misunderstanding. When you look at the political landscape, they're just intentional misunderstanding. Like, I'm not going to agree to what you're saying.
No matter what.
No matter what. But I think a lot of what's going on in the world is just conflict of communication. I had I don't know if I told you this. I probably did, but I had a vision once.
Mm-hmm.
Did I tell you about this?
No.
Where it was deep meditation. I was meditating for like 30 hours or something. I mean, it was intense.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this vision where I could see the world, and I think I might have told you this. The beings in the world were covered. They were like dust bunnies. Did I tell you about this?
No.
And everyone was covered in this dust, and beneath the dust was these little blue lights, but everyone was covered in this dust, and whatever communication had to come out from one being was distorted by this dust, and then the other being would receive it, and the receiving was distorted by the dust. This sounds kind of weird, but and then he would reply, and the point was that these two beings were, really intentionally wanting to communicate with each other, but there's just this distortion going back and forth. And the distortion was all, as I realized later, I didn't understand what it was at the time, but the dust was all of our mental conceptual ideas about things. So, as I speak to you, my whole experience colors what I'm saying, and then your experience colors what you're hearing. And then, so there's distortion going back and forth all the time between between my experience and how it relates to what the words are. Our vocabularies are limited. And so, I say drugged, and you hear something,
I mean, just because of the nature of my work for a long, something's happened here. How do I get this rid of it? It's not what I expected to happen. I can't see you. How does that go?
Well, that's important.
It is. Let's try again. There you go. Okay. Yeah. I mean, oh dear. Now it's okay.
But imagine we're from different cultures. Even within one culture, even within, not only within the United States, within California, you talk to one person and they've got an entirely different experience with you. And then, like the gender issues, a lot of it is just miscommunication,
So this is, and I've talked about this before, and I keep talking about the same thing. In this conversation right now, there's a core sense of yourself that is patently, clearly non-dual. Non-dual means there's a layer of this conversation right now that you experience as a sense of I that includes everything, which is exactly the same as the quality of knowing or being on the first day of life. I know I've talked about this before, but also there's a quality of being which is we are right now. There's a feeling right now of being in connection, you and me. And you can't say anything about it. You're in connection with me, you're in communication with me, or you're not. And you're in connection with yourself, or you're not. Right? But in both cases, it's deeper than any sense of conflict, any appearance of conflict. Because it's not two.
Well, yeah, I mean, I answered a question recently on Quora, but not one, not two. That's the Zen saying, not one, not two.
Well, that's slightly different. That I think what you're referring to in the would be not the idea of one, right? And not two means not two. Is that what you were trying to say?
Well, I think what I experience with you is we've established a comfort level.
Yes.
That I feel comfortable letting down all the faces that I put out normally. And I don't feel that I need to pretend about anything. So that dust I was talking about that everyone's covered with, I think that much less between you and I.
Yes.
So I think that
Yes,
we
I
are
agree.
able to communicate from core to core.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, but what's cool is that we can initiate that level of communication, we each of us, because if we tune into this sense of I am, I keep on talking about this communication trust power, this inner confidence in communication, and we feel there's a dialogue inside that says I am, means there's a conscious knowing I exist. There's an I, this I that is very, very basic. It's before thought. And when that is conscious, it contributes to our communication, to our how we move our bodies, what we talk about. We communicate at the level of being, even if the other person is really stuck in their head, let's say. Because if I fully include you, or you fully do the same thing yourself, there's an immediate impact on the communication.
Yeah. But like you point out, I mean, you and I are two old white guys, you know.
Yes.
So
It's always the same bloody thing.
so we have a basis of understanding right there. If you were a purple female,
Yes.
with raised on another planet, we'd have more difficulty understanding each other.
That is a great advantage when Laura's on the call, actually.
She's not purple, but that's why I chose purple, actually.
She's close.
But still, we have there's an intimate voice within our head. And I know everyone has it. I have it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always talking to me. It's always saying, you did good on this. You didn't do so well on that. You really need to, shore this up and do a better job. It's always there's this critical thing that's always going on inside my head. And that's very intimate. And so even though, like, you and I, two white guys, can communicate, and fairly intelligently, it's still not as intimate as that voice in your head. So you tell me something and I still have to translate it, even as close as we are.
Absolutely.
As close as we are, and as well trusted we feel with each other, there's still a translation that goes on.
Absolutely. I'm a pain in the neck. Which means that people that know that I'm closest and very active with every day, very often I will query a text message because there's a double meaning.
Oh God, text is terrible.
Yeah, but even in speaking, somebody will use a word and there's like a, the most obvious meaning, but there's also a secondary meaning, and perhaps I see a benefit in my work of the last 15 years has been to be in conversations with clients and learners where they speak in English as a second language, and there's an ambiguity in what they say, and my job is to catch that ambiguity, part of my job, and to choose the road less traveled, means choose the less obvious meaning of what they're saying to highlight in a very direct way that their precision in English wasn't sufficient.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a beginner, I'm just gonna duck and dive and weave all over the place to support the feeling of a real conversation. But for somebody who's advanced, I'll be pulling out all of those ambiguities. And so I've had practice in hearing those, and it's really, it's actually a one question in my heart as I hear somebody speaking, and that is, do I understand enough right now? It's just one question, always. Do I understand enough right now? And if I don't, then I need to ask a question or clarify, or, you know? So there's a feeling inside, am I still sufficiently on the same page with Lee right now?
Yeah.
And always, and the answer is always different, because if it's we're negotiating a $10 million deal, or we're having a discussion about what to have for dinner, the requirement for precision will change. The requirement for how clearly I understand the other person will change.
Yeah.
But we're still the most exciting thing, and it's so cool what you just said, is the potential of communication and the heart to, it's like so often we talk about words as blocking the heart, as limiting the true, simple human reality between people. And I'm saying we can reintegrate words, and in such a way that the heart means this non-dual, non-separate phenomenon is kind of between us. It's like there's one event happening in a Buddhist context, you know, dependent origination. There's one event happening, and this one event is shared understanding. Shared understanding. That's what's between us. And then using our mind to critique this feeling of understanding, to double check it.
Well, communication, you know, language just comes from the mind, and that's probably part of the problem.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, we're using concepts to communicate. Every word is a concept. Yeah. Words are concepts, you know, and they mean different things to different people.
Communication is
no words. I'm saying language.
Language comes from the mind. Okay. Yes.
Language is conceptual.
Yes. Okay. Accept it.
Language is a bunch of little bits of concepts. Mm-hmm. So I use a word, drugged. I drugged myself out of bed, and you think drugs, you know. And
I chose to ignore the obvious meaning. Okay.
But the point is that happens all the time, and even on a very subliminal level, people misunderstand each other. You know, there's so much language being tossed around that becomes a blur as to what people are really meaning. You know, and you mentioned text. You know, I've been having this textual problem, you know, with a woman, and we text each other, and we just continually misunderstand each other, and it's just like, because you
So,
know a word can mean different things, and it can, you know, you put a text word in and you mean something, and somebody else can take it in an entirely different way.
so I agree. So I think she would love it if she texts you something and you say, with the best will in the world, with the most positive attitude towards you, I read two possibilities here. Which one is it? You see?
Yeah, but then you're going back and forth and you're defining concepts. You're defining, well, what?
No,
It's complicated.
no. If it does come back to if you show in your texting a quality of listening, to be profoundly interested, what did she want to say? You're on a winning path. In my experience with I think with anybody, not just, you know, not just the
Yeah.
opposite gender. I think you're on a winning path. What did you say, and what would you like to say?
Well, you know, I a lot of things are going through my head here trying to pick out a good example, but I just, you know, I find communication between men is just like the most difficult ever. You know, I'll text her and say, well, how are you feeling today? And she'll text back like, why do you want to
Yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly. You know, you're coming from the best feeling in the world, and the potential for that miscommunication is so massive, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And then that, you know, you take that up to the geopolitical level and you see it going on all the time.
It's
Yeah.
deadly. It's deadly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, this is also a part of my own work, is seeing communication as a system. So you've got the words, you've got the heart or the intention of the other person, and the intention of ourselves, the intended meaning of both parties, the either party's awareness that it's a system or not. You know, their assumptions about what communication is drives so much.
Yeah.
But what's, you know, what's so cool about communication is that we've been practicing communication our whole life, so we're actually really damn good at it. We can focus on what we're doing wrong, but we're actually really, really, really good at it. A strange person turns up, says something, and we have a roughly an idea what they're talking about. That's pretty amazing. Focus on the success, not the failure. So if that's true, we've been practicing our whole life, and that's why, by the way, older people are better communicators, especially if they've been focusing on communication. You know, you get to be 40, 50, 60, 70, you keep getting better at it if you're focused on it. And then what was I going to say? So I think it's a reflection of being overtired. I lost what I was going to say.
Are you tired?
Yeah. It's about 3 hours sleep or 2. So
Oh,
I'm tired.
so you're drugged.
Yes, in a way, yes, definitely. Yes, so communication, you know the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, or Zen and the Art of
I read it.
Archery, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
read it 30 years ago, probably.
me too. So you can also think about the same thing about communication, Zen and the Art of Communication,
Yeah.
because then you can start to see communication when it works, when it doesn't work, as a wonderful mirror to our own state.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah. Not that anything else you'd say is not interesting, but but the whole, I mean, applying Zen to communication, so much of Zen is not thinking. It's like being able to work in the world, be in the world without thinking,
Yes.
And I don't mean not analyzing, not being stupid, but I think the thing in Zen, one of the things in Zen is like archery, where you pull the bow back and you shoot without having to think about it, and you get to that level of whatever, where there's no gap between doing, action. You don't put a thought in between. Every time you put a thought in between, you corrupt it in a sense.
Well, this is precisely how, certainly in this call with you, Lee, and also in my work, is I'm consciously I get my ducks in a row, using lots of metaphors today, means that I'm ready to have this call. You've really given lots of energy for the call today. It's cool. And so the intention to be ready for the game. What's the game? There's 60 minutes of not knowing what's going to come, as free as possible. But I'm here. I'm not distracted. I'm here. I'm present. So that's one part. And then in the conversation with you, literally, physically, I have my attention on your face. It's literally, that's where my attention is, on the physical movement of your face. And also my attention is on what I intuit is your internal response. I don't know, but I intuit, right?
Yeah.
So so my heart is aligned with being present now. Plus my attention is on your interest and intention in this call. What I imagine it to be, I can't know. And then I'm literally firing arrows, letting the arrows fly, letting myself speak, and directly, slightly after I speak, checking how I speak. In this case, I don't need to check. I can just mumble and slur and do all kinds of things because you're a native speaker. But if it's not your first language, I have got to be precise of using words that are in the vocabulary range of the person I'm speaking with. Yeah. So it is firing arrows. It's just getting everything in line, and then the being one with the target. Who's the target? You. And letting go, and then hopefully giving some space so you can fire arrows back at me.
Yeah. No, I think this is key, and it's kind of like it's hitting me as a epiphany right now, honestly, because the whole Zen thing, the more thought you put into something, the more you corrupt it in a sense. So you and I are communicating. I can see you. I know things about you, so it helps in the communication. If we suddenly turned off the video,
Mm-hmm.
the level of communication, even though the conversation might continue in the same vein, the level of understanding would diminish. And then
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I'm really
okay, well, just listen to me then.
yes, yes.
No,
I'm
it
listening.
would. I guarantee you, if we turn off the video, it would diminish the level of conversation, because I'm able to intuit things about you from your facial expressions. So I
Yeah.
can tell if you're joking. I can tell if you're being serious. I can tell different things. Plus, I've come to know you. Now,
Yes.
if you were just a person unknown to me, and I wasn't seeing the facial expressions, I would have to put more thought into interpreting what you're saying. And then if we took that we removed another step, so I wasn't even hearing your voice, I wasn't hearing your tonal inflections and things like that. I'm just reading a text message or I'd have to put more thought into it. So there's more thought that's required, and that thought has potential for corrupting it further, right? And that's why text messages are so difficult, because you and I right now may be able to flow back and forth, but if we're texting each other, I'm going to be thinking about, what does he mean by that word? Is he saying this, or was he saying that? And so there's more potential for corruption.
It is.
By thought, and the thought, back to that whole dust bunny vision, the dust of thought, if you clear away all thought and just communicate from blue light to blue light.
Yes. This is the thing is, again, this return to this I in I speak, or I say something. If we say I say something, we can focus on the something, but just as easily we could focus on the I. I say, I see, I feel, I hear, the whole time. I, even in the language, this I, which by language, when I say I think, I am saying to you the whole possibility of who I could be, how I could be, what I could say, how I could manifest. In this moment, I choose to bring it all down to I think this, which means I don't think that, right? So I, in everything I say, I define myself. If I don't say anything, I actually don't define myself, except, there is a facial expression. But no one else can really do that about you. If I say to you, oh, Lee, you are happy, unhappy, angry, sad, a man born in 1953, I believe, whatever, you might say, well, you've read that somewhere, you've heard that somewhere, you even heard it from me from last week, but you might say to me today, that's not me, because I just took a bunch of ayahuasca, or or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I've just come back from a meditation retreat of a week. It's not me. That was me last week. You see, we're going right down into the question: what is communication? What is language?
Yeah. Well, language is and I'm just making this up on the fly.
As we should.
Language is like, you know, connection within duality, right? So our intent is to create the oneness. And this is the whole basis of the leader.
Wait.
This is the whole basis of the.
Let's go slowly so I understand you. What you said is language is a connection in duality,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Because we're communicating in duality. Is as high and as enlightened as you and I.
Let's go slowly. Language. Let's write this down. Let's go slowly. Let's go, because this is really good, Lee. This is because you're a wonderful sparring partner for this. Language. By the way, I left a link for you about Timothy Morton and the Strange Stranger. I recommend it. Language is a connection in duality, right?
Yeah, within duality, right? If we were if we were in non-duality, we wouldn't need we would need language.
Well, who says we're not in non-duality?
Well, we are and we aren't. But we're functioning right now in duality, as enlightened as we think we are. Yeah. See, we're disagreeing already.
Good.
So we're either
again. We've got words, right, that say you are you and I am me, and you are in California and I'm in Germany, but those words are embedded in what? Those words are embedded in a context. Those words cannot exist independent of the speaker of them.
right.
The speaker cannot exist independent of a context. What is that context? One of the contexts in which the speakers speak, in which we as speakers are speaking, is a field that can be described in different ways, is a field between us.
Yeah. All right. So there's interbeing, there's interrelationship.
Interbeing, yeah, that's a great word to use. Yeah.
But it's still, even with that, you know, we're kind of at a pinnacle of it. You know, there's a Alex Gray picture or painting of oneness kind of coming up and looking at itself. You know, two beings coming up and looking at each other, but coming out of a single.
Exactly. The appearance of Lee, the appearance of Mo, arising out of what?
Out of the one.
Out of the one.
Yeah.
Out of the not two. Let's be a little bit more precise.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think there fundamentally is a one, but it becomes differentiated. And you and I are differentiated points within the one. So as differentiated points, we're trying to communicate, and we have to use conceptualized language to do that. You know?
You grow toenails, I believe. I actually don't know. Maybe you're actually in a wheelchair right now, but and you don't have any legs. But,
I don't have any legs, actually. Yeah.
Okay, fingernails. So you grow fingernails. These fingernails come from you. They are produced, they grow. At a certain point, you cut them, the fingernail drops off and hopefully doesn't fall on the floor when your girlfriend is around. Whatever. So at which point does the fingernail stop being you?
Well, I would argue right away. I'd say I don't grow my fingernails. My fingernails grow whatever I'm doing, they're just growing. I cut them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I take responsibility when I think they get too long, and I want to keep them nice and shiny and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. That I do that, but I don't grow them.
They grow themselves.
Somebody else grows them. Something else.
Well, from my perspective, you grow them.
Well, I don't. I don't do a damn thing. If
from
I if I went to sleep for a month, my fingernails would still grow.
Yes. That, to become clear right now, we'd have to discuss what I mean by you. All I mean by you is you, not me, grow your fingernails. Just to be really simple.
Well, I would say my body, this body that I inhabit grows them, and this body is not me. You know.
So we're talking about fingernails, and now I'm suggesting words can be the same. So they come out of our mouth. They're words coming out of our mouth is crystallized. It's to maybe it's dangerous to do, but to make a bridge to quantum physics, it's a collapse of the wave function. That language, language. I invite you to object.
I mean, I love the sound of that, but I'm not sure what you're saying.
Technically, and I'm bravely going where most smart people shouldn't go, but I'm doing it.
Maybe we're not as smart as we think we are.
Definitely. So they talk about how there's a particle is a wavicle. It's a particle? Is it a wave? It's not really clear. And then through the act of observation, it collapses away a cloud of probabilities into one reality.
Yeah.
And so the mind has a whole bunch of thoughts in there, and it collapses into what we actually say.
Well, that's interesting. I like that.
And these kind of issues are really important if you speak a second language. That's what's so cool about or learning to speak a second language, is that you inevitably meet lots of problems in learning and speaking a second language. You meet, and every problem tells you something about the collapse of the wave function. You've got all this bunch of stuff in your head, and I always tell people, get it out, crystallize it, and then you can see, did it work, did it not work? If you try and do it all here, you go nuts, and it just doesn't come out. If you can, the whole quality of it, even if it technically is correct, it sounds weird.
Yeah.
So
well, I like. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
I like the analogy of the wave function. I mean, I'm thinking about that, and you know, the wave function collapses as it's observed. You know, right?
Yeah.
So language seems to be somewhat the same in that as you observe what I'm saying, it collapses into a function, you know, into a state.
Oh, you were talking about a different part of it. I was talking about you were talking about my hearing of your words.
As you observe it. Yeah.
As
You're
I
listening.
Observe it. Whereas I was talking about as I speak, me observing my own words. Just to make it clear, maybe it's the same thing, maybe it's different, but
well, it might be the same thing. You know, they're being observed, and by the, you know, listening is an observations here. So, in a sense, the meaning collapses into a function, right?
Yeah. So, yes. Yeah, and it's something crystallized, and you know, I'm convinced, and I still feel I'm at an early point in this. I always feel there's about 6 different ways of communicating, and I haven't yet been able to work out what they are. However, it's like I'm stuck at a wall of trying to understand something for about 5 years. Anyway.
I'm looking to you to be the expert. You're supposed to have this all figured out.
I'm on the research field right now. So, but as far as I can see, the highest form of language or expression or communication is truly crystallization of God, the absolute, the ground of being, the Allah, the non-dual. It's the crystallization of that in real time. And crystallization means it's got the most, it has a quality that other experiences don't have. That means if you have a fleeting smile on your face, I can observe that smile on your face, but until you say, yes, yes, I had a smile on my face, I cannot definitively say you had a smile on your face. You might say, oh no, my cheek was hurting and I grimaced. So, but language, the point of language is it's something you can hold on to through time. You can say to me next week, this is what you said. And I can refer to it and you can refer to it and we can also record it. So yes, if we film our faces, we could record a certain moment, but there's a quality, the potential of language to integrate highest understanding into the functioning of our own mind. Is that a some degree of agreement? Because then if you agree, then there's something more that I want to say.
Okay, I agree.
Okay. So just to imagine it's true that, oh my God. If you imagine this is true, and it makes me emotional, Lee, because you are listening in such a way that I can express myself. This is a co-creation right now, a co-creation.
Yeah.
I should never, ever think, oh, I'm the one with clever thoughts. It's always someone with an audience enabling certain kinds of thoughts to happen. All right? So if we truly, at the core of our being, imagine or are convinced that communication includes the possibility of this very, very high coherent form of communication, non-dual, not two, absolute communication, then we become God in real time. Let's say it differently. We communicate divinely in real time. Let's say it better. We communicate divinely in real time.
Yeah, I think the closer we get to real time and less thought, the more divine we become. Right? So we are divine. And it's really the thought process, the mind, that separates us from the divine. So the more we have to think,
yes.
So the more we have to stop and think, the more separate we become.
Unless we learn and practice how to be present and include being present and confident, and you have that great benefit from your academic background of being intellectually confident, right? We know there are many people who are not intellectually confident. That means you believe if somebody presents you with something, you can analyze it and you can come to understanding. There are many people in the world who they give up quickly if they meet a difficult concept. They just go, I'm not, this is not my field, or I'm not good enough. And you have a PhD, you've had the training that whatever comes to you in words, you've got the nous to attack it or attempt to grasp it with your mind. And that's good.
No, but see, I don't go around thinking that. I don't go around thinking.
No, you feel it though. You feel it.
No, I mean, I certainly, I just have a training. So if I'd been trained in archery, I would be able to point an arrow at something with less thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all this is. I can do things with less preemptive thought. And you mentioned about being in the present moment, and that's what separates us. You know, that's the whole fundamental basis of enlightenment, is to be present right now is to not be in thought. Every time you put a thought in there, you separate yourself from reality. And the same thing happens with language. The more we can communicate without having to think about what did he say, what did he mean, it could be mean this, it could mean this, it could mean that. Every time we put a thought in there, it separates us. So as we can flow, No, you know. Yes.
At least, sorry. Please continue your point to the end, and then.
Now you interrupted me. Now I've lost it. Sorry, I was going to say something really profound, and
I'm listening. I'm listening.
You screwed it up. It's about flow. You mentioned present time and present moment, and that's the whole basis of everything, is being now, here, present, right? That's
yes.
And so language is the same way. The more I have to think about what you're saying, the further I am from what it is you actually said.
Okay. Is there more, or may I interrupt more politely this time?
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm just excited. So that's because
these are pearls of wisdom. You should be writing this down.
Well, it's being recorded, so it's all good. So we're really onto something, and I truly am so grateful, Lee, because you know the point is, what you've described is the conventional understanding of language, the conventional understanding of communication. And I'm saying, I do believe, this is speculation, but I believe that language originated with something actually very, very high and very pure and very coherent. But we're in a world of double talk, of evasion, of yes, I know what you want to tell me, and I'm going to choose to interpret what you said in the wrong way. I know damn well what you intend to say, but for my own purposes, I'm going to misinterpret what you just tried to say to me. I know that we want to give the illusion of connection, but actually I'm profoundly interested in conflict and difference. You see? So all of these assumptions behind it, and I'm saying if we discover coherent, I'm calling it absolute communication, not to communication, we return to that purity where language serves us for our highest purposes. And just because we've had lots of experiences of it where it's broken down doesn't mean we can't return to that level of coherence. And this is peace. This is the solution right here and now. You talked about all the conflict in the world. Well, we can think, be, speak. Peace just means not to. We can be it now. We can be the solution now, using language and using our own mind to hear when people are trying to reduce language and communication and thinking down to some very cheap, limited level. Yeah. It's all possible now.
I don't know that it is. I think language is limited. I think I would take an opposite view to what you just said. I think, you know, a million years ago, we were grunting, you know, we had no language, so we would grunt, and then that would get interpreted and misinterpreted. What does this grunt mean? What's he mean by that? Does he like this or not like that?
Yeah.
And so we developed words, and then words became more, the vocabulary increased, and we are now at a point where we have some ability to communicate most of the time, but it's still conceptual, and it's still limited. And I'm interested in how do we get past that? How can I actually know what you're thinking without having to interpret your words and your expressions and your tonal, you know, the voice, your tone of your voice and your. I have to use all of those things constantly. I mean, it's amazing to have to, even with you and I,
yes,
as well as we communicate.
Yes.
There's a lot going on that I'm not even
Yes.
aware of in order to hear what you're saying.
Yes.
And it's not anything like being inside your head.
No.
If I could be inside your head, I'd really get it. But I can't.
Dangerous.
You know, that's a scary thought too, isn't it?
I think this is a point to stop. Let's just write this down very clearly. You're saying we have 2 points of view, and that's great. I think it's the perfect place to stop. You're saying language is limiting, and I'm saying language has the potential to be entirely liberating.
I think language is a great tool, but it's developed, but it's still limited, you know, and it's still the basis of conflict, especially cultural, you know.
I think next week the subject will be I'm going to post on it. I have to upload this as well, I think. Is language, this could be, I call it home fun in my work, is language a limiting, in its nature limiting, or does language have the potential to liberate?
But I think
liberate means not to.
Okay, well, I think it's somewhere in between. It's not one, not two.
I think this is perfect to continue.
Okay. All right. Well, I had fun. It's good to see you.
This is really great. This is really great. This is perfect. I'll just stop this.